back.
Hi.
Hi, Rhonda. We're looking at House Bill 2312, and we're hoping that that's okay with you and your employer, and we're on board with that.
Yeah, so it took me, right after I got your email, I sent it out to my boss and a couple other people to make the decision on whether or not I had a conflict. And they did give me the approval to work on the bill for the class with a couple of limitations that I'd like to discuss. And then maybe the classroom can decide if those limitations are acceptable to them.
Okay. Okay.
So it's very rare. If the bill was exactly how it is, Comcast supports it as well. So it would be very easy for me to continue through the process and represent both the classroom and my company in the bill. But legislation rarely remains that way. So if, let's say, right now the bill, it's exciting that they picked this bill because it passed unanimously out of committee yesterday and is now making its way to probably, I'm assuming it'll be referred to the House Appropriations Committee because it does take $300 million from the state's rainy day fund and transfers it into the account to work on rural broadband. If something happens in that process where they decide to switch the bill and instead make it a tax on companies like mine, or if they were to do a big surcharge on existing users, I would probably then have to switch to at least opposing that portion of the bill. So if the class understands where I'm at, I mean, as long as the dollars to support this come from either the state's general fund or from the rainy day fund, or there's also another bill by Representative Orcutt that's moving through the process that allows rural counties to take part of the state sales tax and they get to keep more of the local sales tax and use those money for rural broadband. It may be something that we could combine. But does that make sense? What I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if
it's all about the dollar.
Yeah, well, sort of. Yeah, I mean, you know, we could get into why if you want. I mean, we already pay 5% of gross on all of our services to local government, plus lots of other taxes. So they tend to get a little riled up over it. So that it is about the dollar.
You bet it is.
So you guys are in agreement that she can work on the bill, but if something changes, then she might have to oppose it. Or you guys are okay with that?
I'm okay.
Okay. Yeah, I understand too. Okay. All right. Yep, we're good.
Okay, yeah, what I would still be able to help direct the class on what to do for them to continue their support. I just wouldn't be able to testify on their behalf. So I could still help them do what they need to do too. Okay.
Since we met last, we have been looking at some articles on the internet. Some of them have been newspaper articles. One from the Seattle Times. My class and Mrs. Lester's class is going to do this tomorrow, but we watched the hearing on January 17th about the bill, and a librarian testified from the PUD, and a Stevens County commissioner also testified, and they were all for the bill, in support of it. And then we also watched a really great video yesterday. It was not about Washington State, but it was about Virginia, rural Virginia.
Okay.
County that half the county has broadband internet and half the county does not. And so I was going to send that link to you because it's an 11-minute video and it's really interesting.
That would be great. Please do. I'll watch it for sure.
Okay, so, and then Mrs. Lester can talk about what her class has been doing, but we have some questions, but and we got kind of a lot of student questions, which is great this time. But at the end, I was hoping just if you could kind of address it. Looks like, did it pass out of executive session?
Yeah, yesterday the committee held an executive session and it passed out of the policy committee unanimously. So since it has a fiscal impact, a large fiscal impact, it will be going to a fiscal committee, most certainly House Appropriations.
Would you say our bill's kind of on step 3 then?
Yes.
Okay.
Step
And
one
then,
was having a hearing, which a lot of bills don't have. And step two is having a vote. And now step three is going to the fiscal committee.
okay, so it's still alive and we're on step 3. And then, so after the kids have their questions, if you could tell them whatever we can do to help move the bill along, just to
Okay.
give homework, because then that really gives us purpose in the classroom.
Yeah, we're gonna have
So-
to for sure because we're gonna have to really work on House appropriations to get them to hear the bill. So we'll work on, and we're gonna work on some what we call talking points with the class after. So let's save some
Okay,
time.
perfect. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Maggie and Juan.
Hello, my name is Juan.
Juan,
My name is Maggie.
hi Maggie, hi Juan. What's your questions today?
Do you like the bill we picked?
You know, I really do. What's exciting about the bill is that this is sort of my bread and butter. I work on these issues constantly for my job, so I understand it better than I would some of the in previous years. Some bills were picked that I didn't understand as well. So I do like it. It's an exciting bill.
Okay, that's all we have.
Thank you. Hello.
Hi, cute top.
Hi,
Hi, my name is Sydney.
I'm Connor.
Amy, was it Amy?
Sydney.
Sydney and Connor. Hi there.
Our question is, how hard is this bill going to be to turn into a law?
Passing bills is really hard. I mean, one of these days we should pick a bill that you guys want to oppose because killing a bill is a little easier. This one is especially hard because it's taking, think about it, $300 million out of the state's rainy day fund, our emergency fund that we keep, and appropriating it towards broadband service, which is, some would say, an emergency. That there's a digital divide in the state where some people have and some people don't. But it's gonna. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It's gonna be a heavy lift for you guys to get this all the way along. Just because it's $300 million is a massive amount of money. There's one bill, just to give you an example. There's a universal service bill for broadband for $5 million. It's up for hearing right now, and they've been trying to pass it for 3 years. So it's $5 million versus $300 million. We've got a lot of work to do.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Hi, I'm Alexia. I'm Tuesday.
Nice to meet you both. What's your question?
Okay, how long will it take to have all the rural places in Washington have high-speed internet?
You know, that's a really good question. We've been working on this for nearly 15 years. And Washington, and I know it's not going to seem to it because you live in some rural areas, but Washington is the second most wired state in the country when it comes to having broadband services ubiquitously across the state. With I think about 98% of all residents have high-speed broadband, but that still leaves about 200,000 without. And it also leaves, there's more than just the digital divide in terms of geography. There's also the economic divide where high-speed broadband services can be very expensive, and sometimes families just aren't able to make the expense. So the bill that you're looking at looks at both. What can we do to make it more affordable in rural areas, and what can we do to get people finally hooked up? I think if this bill went through, we could probably solve the problem within a handful of years. I mean, that's what this is based off of the New York model, and they're hoping. I think their plan is a 6 to 8 year plan. $300 million is a lot of money. So if it passed, I think there'd finally be. I think we'd probably have ubiquitous services across our state. Does that answer your question? Because if it doesn't, you can ask me to say it a different way.
It's fine. It answers it.
And how will this change the state?
Well, I mean, I think, like I said, I think that, we hear all the time and it's anecdotal. But I think that there's a lot of students who still have to go to the library or sit outside a business with their laptop to catch a Wi-Fi connection so they can do their homework. I think that it would also help on things like telecommuting, where people who live in Mason County, like you do, or Kitsap County, and might want to have a job in Seattle and telecommute 3 or 4 days a week instead of driving that way. They could live in the community that they love, and telecommute. Also, telemedicine, and what would happen if people were able to see some of the best specialists for a medical issue that they have, and they live in someplace like Forks or Republic or even Belfair or Allen, and they could do that remotely via a broadband connection. That's, there's endless possibilities on what can be done.
Okay. Thank you.
What classifies as an urban area and a rural area?
That's a good question, and we could look it up. There is a definition for what rural is. I've looked it up before, and I might have to get back to you on that one. But it's counties with a population of so much. So Mason County and Kitsap County are both considered rural counties, even though they have some urban areas in them, like Bremerton. I don't know if Shelton could really be considered urban, but that's how they get to the definition. It's by population density per mile. And I will look up that definition and send it to you. Or you know what, for homework, you can look it up.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, mine's Craig.
Hi, Craig.
My question is, what obstacles do you think we might run into during our bill?
Well, I think it's like what I was telling Ms. Lester and Ms. Wynn about at the beginning. It's all about the money. And I think the money piece is going to be the hard piece. And we might need to be creative about how we find the money. I think $300 million is a huge ask, and I see why they're doing it, because it's bold and it's enough money to solve the problem. But I think that's going to be the hardest part, because it's hard to say no to building out more, the more economic development that rural broadband would bring. But I think it really comes down to, can the state afford to lose $300 million out of the rainy day fund? And can we pitch it in a way that makes it sound like broadband really is an emergency?
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, Levi. I just looked at my name.
All right, you ask yours first. All right, introduce yourself. I'm Kyle. I'm Levi. Hello.
Hi, Kyle and Levi.
All right. Currently, who has the highest population without high-speed internet in Washington State?
I don't know that answer. Without
All right.
without it, I don't know that answer, but I could try to find it out for you. Actually, I'll tell you what, why don't you take that as a project to look it up, and I'll look it up as well, and let's see what we both come up with. I bet you we'll have different answers, but we could probably get pretty close. It's hard.
All
to,
right.
It's hard to tell. We did a broadband map in 2008 where all the providers mapped out where their facilities were at, and there's a way to find it out, but I'll try to find it for next time.
All right. This is another one of Kyle's questions. I'm just reading it. He said, what happens if two companies tie as the lowest bidder?
I don't know exactly what would happen if two tied. I don't think, that's kind of a good problem to have, right? Where you have more than one company interested in moving into another. I think that they're going to probably look at a couple of other criteria and not just lowest price. I think that they'll look for which companies have experience in serving an area, whether or not they have a solid business plan to be able to keep the services going or not. I'm giving you too long of an answer, aren't I? Yeah.
No,
It's all right. It's in my brain. I got it.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, I think that there's going to be enough criteria that they'll be able to choose between one, even if the amount was the same.
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Miguel.
I'm like,
I have researched and seen like richer people, richer neighborhood gets good internet, and poor people in poor neighborhood get really bad internet. What do you think?
I think that's a fair question. I could tell you that my company, I can only speak for my company when I talk about this because it's what I know the best, but we serve across our footprint ubiquitously, meaning that it doesn't matter if you live in a poor neighborhood or a rich neighborhood, you get the same services. But I think that what happens with a lot of build out of any type of business is that companies build where the population center is denser, where there's more people, where you can where your business has a better chance of being successful, and that just happens to sometimes be in urban areas where there is more money.
All right.
I could say for this issue, it's about how much it costs to build our network to someone who lives in a rural area. Like if, let's say maybe there's 7 houses in a square mile. That costs a lot more than if there's 700 in a square mile.
All right. That's all.
I'm Quinn. I'm Kira.
Hi there.
If this law passes, when do you think Mason County will be getting funding for high-speed internet in rural areas?
Well, I mean, I think that you've got lots of providers in Mason County right now who I think would be interested. One is Hood Canal Telecommunications that lives up, their headquarters are in Union. I'm sure that they would be looking at serving more of Mason County. In fact, I think they just got a grant to serve up at Lake Cushman. There's 500 houses up there that haven't had internet, high-speed internet before, and I think they're going to get it now. I think Wave Broadband, who I think has some service territory in Union in Belfair and Allen, there might be an opportunity for them to be able to extend their network out a little more. And PUD3 has been doing quite a bit of work, so they'd be there as well. So how long? I mean, it's probably, if this bill passes, it would probably be at least a year before they can implement any kind of a grant process. So, I would say between a year and 3 years before some of the furthest areas in Mason County were served. That's just a guess. I'm not an engineer. That's just a guess. We could talk to an engineer if you'd like.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Colby. I'm Wyatt.
Hi, guys.
So our question is, since it costs $300 million to fund this program, comes out of the budget stabilization account, what agencies could possibly lose money because of this program?
Well, I don't think any would, because it comes out of what budget stabilization account, also known as the rainy day fund. So, there may be some agencies in emergency management that might not like it. They didn't sign in on the bill as being opposed. I think we'll know a little more about that as the bill makes it through the process in the Appropriations Committee. But it wouldn't come from any other agency, that particular $300 million. If it came out of the general fund, then it could have some effect. But since it comes out of the rainy day fund or budget stabilization account, it would not.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Were
That's
you
it.
worried about an account?
No.
Okay.
Hello,
Hi there.
I'm Haley. I'm Alexia.
Hi there.
Hi. Our question is, how do you think this will affect people in rural communities?
Well, I think we talked about that already a little bit, just in terms of being able to telework, do telemedicine, heck, to do some gaming if you wanted to. That is hard to do now if you have an old, what we call a DSL connection or satellite service. It's just, you just don't have enough bandwidth to do that. So I think it would really change, especially with, doing your homework, applying for college, that sort of thing. What do you think it would do?
I think that it'll be like the same as what you think.
Okay, fair enough.
And then, how will the cost change people?
What's that?
Like, because how will the cost change people? Because the bill is really expensive. So, like, will taxes go up or something?
No, it wouldn't, it would not if they take the money out of the budget stabilization account, taxes wouldn't go up. If they decide to fund it in a different way, taxes could go up. You could see, people have talked about raising sales tax by a little bit. People have talked about raising business and occupation tax, and some have talked about raising the tax that you pay on your telephone and video service. They can't tax internet service right now because the federal government has said that internet has to be free of taxation. But those are some of the ways that they could look at if they failed to get the dollars out of the budget stabilization account.
Okay. Thank you.
Hello,
My name's Madison,
my name's Colin.
and our question is, how many private sector bidders are willing to participate in the reverse auction?
I think that's something we don't know yet. There's only one reverse auction that's been put into place that we know about, that I know about, and that's in New York. I think that there's been sort of reverse auction type of thing in either Wisconsin or I think it's Wisconsin, but I'd have to check that. So I mean, it depends on whether those areas butt up to someone else's property, so their facilities. So I would expect that we'd see quite a few private companies get involved. CenturyLink, Frontier Communications in your area. It would be, like I said before, Wave, Broadband, Hood Canal Communications. So lots of companies I think would be interested in the reverse auction. I also think that we'd see some what we call local government, like entities like public utility districts, the PUD3, PUD2 that you're familiar with. They might want to try to get involved in the reverse auction process as well to build services.
Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Chloe.
Hi, I'm Isabella.
Nice to meet you, Bill.
In Eastern Washington, do you think it will still take 1 to 3 years for high-speed internet to reach those low populated areas?
Well, I'm not, like I said before, I'm not an engineer. I mean, I think that, I don't know that every home will be served in 1 to 3 years. I was just saying that I think that we could see some people start getting to work in that time. I think that there's lots of places in both Eastern and Washington and Western Washington that are incredibly hard to serve just because of the geography. Places that are very mountainous, or in our area where there's a lot of water that we have to deal with. You know, especially getting to some of the islands where you have to do what we call submarine cables to get across. So some of that could take time. I mean, I don't. I'm just making a guess right now on how long I think it could take. I'm not an engineer, so it's just a wild guess.
Okay,
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Michaela. Hi, my name is Dominga.
Nice to meet you both.
Thank you for helping us with our bill. That can we do next?
Okay, great question. So for your homework, I'm going to have you start working on what we call talking points, which is making a list of very brief points on to support your support for the bill, if that makes sense. So why you think passing the bill is a good idea. And we're going to come up with maybe a list of 8 to 10. And then we also need to get busy emailing the House Appropriations Committee and asking those members to bring the bill up for a hearing. I think the chairman of that committee is Representative, hang on a minute, I got to look it up. I think that committee is Representative Tim Ormsby. But we can get you the list. So we're gonna send an email to mainly the chair, but you guys should divide up and maybe do them in groups so that you could send an email to every member on that committee and ask them to bring the bill up for hearing. We're looking up just the member list for appropriation. Hang on, just give us a second, please.
Okay.
Oh yeah, there we go. Yeah, House. Yeah, appropriations. There we go. So can you guys see this? Let's see. So Drew McEwen, this is exciting because the assistant ranking minority member on that committee is your representative, Drew McEwen. So let's get some emails out to Tim Ormsby, who's the chairman of that committee, and Drew McEwen, who's your representative. That's always good. Those are the two that I really want you to focus on, but it would be great if you had time to have a divide up and send to the rest of the list too. But let's really focus on Representative Ormsby and McEwen.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, kid. So when is the next time the bill will be in front of a committee? Is that scheduled yet?
That's not scheduled yet. We should see it come on in the next day or two. I'll drop by and talk to Representative Ormsby, who chairs appropriations, this afternoon and see if he's got a feel for it. I will also ask Representative DeBolt, who is the primary sponsor of the bill, to follow up and see if it can get a hearing in appropriations as well. But it'll come up pretty quick because we're on a short session with compressed timeframes here. So I expect it within the next week or two.
So it'd be beneficial for us to email you with talking points on why this should be passed, and then you can testify on their behalf.
Yep, that would be great. So if you send me talking points, I will draft testimony and send it to you for your approval.
Okay.
And then I'll also continue working on a list for you, and I'll get that to you right away. I had some computer issues last week, but I'm all set now. So I'll be able to email you with the names of the committee members that you should follow up on with your emails as well.
Okay.
Perfect.
And then since our kids are living in a rural area, some of them have good internet, some of them don't even have internet. Would some personal testimony or personal experiences about how not having adequate internet has affected them as students, would that be beneficial?
That would be fantastic. So let's do it in two ways. If as time allows, let's have the ones without internet to be able to jot down very briefly in their emails to members, especially to Representative McEwen, how frustrating it is to not have internet at their home and how this could help them. And then to me, if you could get a few examples to me to build into testimony, that would be really helpful.
Okay.
I'll have to have appropriations moves fast, so I'll have to have very, very short testimony. But it's great to have an example or two.
And then could you remind me again, when do you need that by?
Well, we're not scheduled for hearing yet, so if we could work on that in the next week, that would be very helpful.
Okay. That sounds like it would have a great purpose for our classroom. And does that sound interesting? That come up with some personal testimony about not having good internet, and then some 8 to 10 talking points. Okay, and then we'll. I think we're going to start emailing in my class tomorrow or Monday. So
that would be great. That would be great. If you could send me a couple copies of the emails, not all of them, but if you could send me a couple of examples, that would be really helpful.
Right, and then we have some pieces of evidence too to share with you.
Okay.
Like from the hearing, we heard that 99 out of 322 school districts in Washington State have Wi-Fi issues. And we have 7 school districts in Washington State that don't even have Wi-Fi. So the kids have found some real detailed information they think is interesting.
That'd be very helpful.
Okay, all right.